2016. My name is Joe Buonanata, Senior Associate for Residential Programs at the Green Bank. Today's speakers from the Green Bank will be Brian Garcia, President and CEO, Genevieve Sherman, Director of Commercial and Industrial Programs, and Ben Healy, Director of Clean Energy Finance. All attendees will be placed in listen-only mode, so please type any questions into the GoToMeeting question box on the bottom left-hand portion of your screen, and we'll get to as many as possible at the end of the presentation. A reminder that this webinar will be recorded and that we will send out both the slides and audio recording to all who have registered by the end of this week. With that, I thank you all for joining, and we'll now pass the presentation over to Brian.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Joe mentioned, today we are joined by Genevieve Sherman and Ben Healy. We're excited to be including them today in our update. So our agenda for this afternoon is to provide updates on our 4 sectors. Genevieve is going to kick us off with the commercial and industrial sector. I will cover the institutional and statutory and infrastructure sector, and then Ben Healy and myself will share duties on the residential sector updates. And then we will wrap it up with other news at the end with regards to some things that are happening live, real time, either at the legislature or things that we are working on today at the Connecticut Green Bank. Next slide. So with that, I'm going to transfer this over to Genevieve Sherman to give us the update on commercial and industrial sector programs. Genevieve.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Genevieve Sherman, the Director of Commercial and Industrial Programs, and I'm going to give you an update on CPACE. So a lot has happened since the last check-in on C&I. The program continues to grow rapidly, which is very exciting. We actually have 117 towns now that have passed resolutions. So we're just getting a couple newer contracts signed, but we're now covering over 90% of the state with CPACE and continuing to just have incredible support from our local boards of selectmen, town managers, economic development coordinators in getting out the word about CPACE to businesses located in all of these towns. Next slide. Demand in the program is growing as well. Right here you're seeing closed applications. In a subsequent slide we'll show you capital invested. But you can see that we're getting more and more projects through the pipeline each year. This is, of course, just showing the loan applications that were closed out in 2015. The number of applications that have come into the Green Bank is significantly larger. Commercial projects tend to have longer sales cycles, so the intake funnel is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we're going to be very excited to see that number rise again next year. A lot of that demand is coming from contractors in our state. I think we went from about 30 contractors submitting projects into this program to 50 just in the last couple of months. Contractors stemming from solar energy to turnkey energy efficiency services companies, specialized energy technology vendors such as LED lighting. It really runs the gamut, but we're continuing to see newer technologies and new bundles of technologies get thrown together by really enterprising companies and financed using the PACE program. Next slide. So here you can see a little bit of the numbers around capital investment. We actually closed out on several projects in the first month of this year, so we're actually now already over $750 million in the program since its inception. Really incredible. And again, that number is continuing to tick up and up and up, and we'll talk about some of the reasons why and what's driving the growth of capital investment. But you can see on the right side here the types of projects that are underneath that $75 million. Lots and lots of renewable energy, primarily solar. We've seen that solar and CPACE are just a great match. When you can amortize payments for solar over its full effective useful life, okay, and amortizations for CPACE go out for 25 years, that really enables property owners to go solar and to capture the cost savings of solar immediately and keep those savings on an annual basis for decades. So going solar with little to no money down and immediate cash flow is just a very compelling value proposition. We're seeing a lot of commercial and industrial property owners use CPACE to go solar. But of course, we have a lot of energy efficiency And then what's very exciting is the combination of energy efficiency and renewable energy. And that 16% includes a lot of energy efficiency, such as HVAC, lighting, and solar, but it also includes technologies like combined heat and power. Next slide. All right, and I think this is our last slide on sort of CPACE by the numbers. We've also seen a broadening of the range of sizes of these loans. In 2015, we sort of lowered our soft floor for these loans to $30,000, and that immediately introduced a lot of smaller projects into the program. You can see the smallest loan now has just been just over that $30,000. And we're doing a lot of, boiler replacements, conversions from fuel oil to natural gas, small solar projects, so under 100 kilowatts. We've really opened up CPACE to that small business market and are seeing a lot of volume there. The average size of these projects has stayed about the same, but what has changed is the higher end of the spectrum. Earlier, actually the very end of the last quarter, we facilitated the closing of the largest PACE project ever done in the country, which is at Stakeholder Square, which is a marquee commercial office building in downtown Hartford. Many of you know it. They were able to install a very, very high efficiency boiler chiller plant. It's an over an $8 million investment, very exciting, and it was done entirely with private capital. The Green Bank didn't extend any of its own dollars as a credit enhancement or co-funding that investment. And then again, the diversity of properties. We've seen the numbers shift around here a little bit as well. The industrial sector climbed from about 15% of our portfolio and doubled to nearly 30% of our portfolio. Again, primarily because of the sort of match made in heaven of CPACE financing, solar technology, and those big flat roofs on industrial buildings. And we've also seen our nonprofit sector increase a lot. The CPACE program, through our PACE secured lease and PPA for nonprofits, has really expanded the ability for churches, schools, et cetera, to access solar technology through the CPACE program. And I should say before we go to the next slide that you can see all of these facts on CPACE at our website, www.cpace.com, and click on the tabs to look for our quarterly dashboard. Okay, we'll continue to put out these numbers each quarter of the year. Next slide. So what's driving all of the growth of the program? Well, 2015, particularly the last quarter of the calendar year, were a really, really exciting moment for the program because a lot of the things we put into place at the beginning of 2015 really started to take off. The first is our open market solution. So as all of you on the call know, the Green Bank is interested in facilitating private capital investment in our state. So we like to leverage the dollars on our own balance sheet that we're putting into these projects into 5, 10, 20, 50 times more dollars coming from the private sector. And with commercial PACE, the goal has always been to have what we think of as an open market, which is to say any qualified investor that wants to put their dollars to work in commercial PACE projects, we want them to be a part of our program. And the Connecticut Green Bank had to really innovate in this area several years ago to kind of jumpstart a market in Connecticut, which we did by putting our own dollars out the door, packaging them in portfolios, and selling them off to investors. But 3 years in, we're now finally at the stage where interested investors are now directly lending their own money into these projects. So that project at Stakeholder Square in downtown Hartford, that was financed by Clean Fund, one of our qualified capital providers you see here. And that was a direct loan, which is to say they directly negotiated the terms of that transaction with the property owner, and the Connecticut Green Bank really just administered that CPACE transaction as a program administrator. So this open market solution, it's always been around, but we really sort of polished it off in 2015 because of lender interest. We essentially created what we think of as our standard term sheet. This is also up on our website for any capital providers that are on the call. This term sheet essentially outlines the key relationships between the Connecticut Green Bank and a lender as it regards to originating and funding PACE transactions in our state. It talks a little bit about what capital providers do and the requirements around their lending in our state, and it also covers what the Connecticut Green Bank does as a program administrator in terms of qualifying projects and facilitating the security of these transactions through getting a lien placed on the property. So this term sheet went out in 2015, but in the latter half of the year, we started to see capital providers make use of it. Currently, the two on the screen that you can see have executed term sheets with the Green Bank and have actively already started lending, which is to say they're out in the market making CPACE loans, helping us grow the overall market, which is very exciting. And so you can see the link at the bottom of the page if you'd like to learn more about these two particular lenders or learn more about how any capital provider can sort of get into this term sheet relationship with the Green Bank and start putting its dollars to work. Next slide. In addition to our open market solution and putting that term sheet out to the market, the Connecticut Green Bank also capped off a year-long solicitation and search for a capital provider to partner with the Green Bank to fund CPACE transactions. And right before Christmas of last year, we were very proud and excited to announce that we were entering into a partnership with Hannon Armstrong. Hannon Armstrong is going to be providing up to $100 million for CPACE financing for clean energy and energy efficiency in our state. This partnership is extremely exciting because it really ensures that there will be on-demand capital that is affordable with flexible underwriting and terms for a huge range of commercial properties in the state that you've already seen on our quarterly dashboard. And it also will ensure that there is a streamlined source of financing that property owners can access and learn about through the Green Bank. Next slide. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Hannon Armstrong is a publicly traded company. They provide both debt and equity financing for energy efficiency and renewable energy. They've been in the market a very long time. They've been in the renewable energy sector for a quarter of a century and have quite a bit of experience in energy efficiency finance as well. They have been a qualified capital provider in our program since 2013. But this was sort of the first moment where we were able to engage with Hannon Armstrong in a really meaningful way. So we're extremely excited to have the depth of expertise and experience of the Hannon Armstrong team joining the Green Bank staff to take this $100 million and get it out into the market very quickly. Next slide. Some of you on the webinar may have listened into a separate webinar that we did actually just a couple of weeks ago that got into much more detail on the partnership between Hannon Armstrong and the Connecticut Green Bank. So if anyone missed that and is interested, write in questions and we can get you the slides from that webinar. But I wanted to give you a high-level snapshot of what this means. The key innovations for contractors or capital providers that have been working with the Green Bank to get their CPACE financing is that Hannon Armstrong is now going to be the lender of record. One of the constraints to our ability to grow this market that we saw when it was just the Connecticut Green Bank putting its dollars to work is that it required that property owners, okay, the folks that are actually borrowing this money to implement energy upgrades, were subject to state contracting provisions. And this is something we really wanted to avoid in order to truly make our commercial PACE market an open, competitive source of private capital. So the process for applying for CPACE, the ways in which we underwrite the loans, et cetera, that will not change, and the Connecticut Green Bank will continue to sort of be the customer-facing relationship with property owners who want to use this source of capital. But the actual financing agreement and term sheet, all the underlying documentation will be in Hannon Armstrong's name, which will really free up those property owners from having to get into a contract with the state. In addition, there are some changes to our underwriting processes that basically expand the underwriting box for these loans. So previously, the Connecticut Green Bank had published some financial underwriting criteria for commercial PACE projects. We are retaining those, but we are adding some additional underwriting criteria to add a little bit more flexibility and expand the number of eligible projects we think we can fund. One of the other very exciting things about this partnership with Hannon Armstrong is our ability to offer both shorter and longer maturities for CPACE loans. Previously, we had been offering loans between 10 to 20 years. So we're now going to shorten that to 5 years and also extend it to 25 years. And there are some very competitive interest rates in that mix, which you will see. And finally, we have the ability to also get flexible on amortization schedules. So the period of time in which property owners repay both principal and interest on these benefit assessments can become a little bit more flexible to match up the way that energy savings are experienced by the building owner with their payments over time. So again, this is just a very high-level snapshot, but I think the takeaway is that the partnership between Hannon Armstrong and the Connecticut Green Bank has really, yet again, iterated on the successful PACE program we already have in place. It's introducing even more flexible underwriting and financing terms for the market and is backed by up to $100 million of financing that's ready to go out the door. So for those that are interested, please write in. You can see a lot of this information online, but if you'd like copies of the slides from a few weeks ago, we can get those out as well. And I think that concludes the C&I sector update.
Great. Thank you, Genevieve, for that comprehensive update of our CPACE program. If you out there are a property owner or a contractor and have yet to engage with the CPACE program, please jump in. We're financing a number of projects across the state. All right, next slide. All right, so we are going to talk quickly through what we're doing on the institutional sector side, and it really comes down to bonds, issuing green bonds in 2016. So actually, back in 2012, when we were working with the Connecticut General Assembly to pass a CPACE policy, we were also working with the legislature on our bonding provisions. So we do have the ability to issue revenue bonds. That was passed in 2012. And now we're at a point in the market and within our organization to start looking at how we're going to be issuing green bonds to increase capitalization in the market to allow us to expand our investment activity and attract more private investment so we can scale up the market for green energy here in the state of Connecticut. So I wanted to just quickly give you an update on what our process is for moving that forward. Next slide. So in terms of our overall strategy, so we have 5 things that we're currently working on. The first is to put in place a bond indenture that's going to serve as our template for issuing green bonds. We'll talk about that timeline here in a second. The management of our green bond strategy is really being led by our finance team, Bert Hunter and the amazing staff that we've got on our finance team, as well as our accounting teams leading that effort. We've got some assistance from Lamont Financial Services and Shipman and Goodwin that are providing us some technical underwriting as well as legal assistance as we look at establishing our indenture and issuing bonds. Of course, our partners from the Office of the Treasurer have been great in terms of helping us think about what the role of bond financing is within the context of the Connecticut Green Bank. And we've been getting some great advice from our colleagues over at the Connecticut Housing and Finance Authority who issue bonds on a regular basis. So that's our management team. Back in the fall of 2015, we issued an RFP to the market seeking support in a number of areas, book running for a senior manager, who would be co-managers of our bond issuances, private placement agents for the bonds, and through that RFP process, we received 20 responses, and we've selected 5 who are going to be helping us primarily with co-managing our bond issuance. So we're very excited to be moving forward with this. Initially, we had planned for our bond issuances to be focused on lead by example. This is the state's efforts to reduce energy consumption by 20% by the end of 2018. There are a number of energy savings performance contract projects that are out there that we hope to support through bond issuances. we're also looking at other programs and products to support with the bond issuances as well. In terms of planning, so the use of capital proceeds that comes from the bond issuances are going to be built into our comprehensive plan and budget. So we are currently working through that now. It's our expectation that in the May-June timeframe that we will be bringing forward to our board a multi-year comprehensive plan and budget that will include expectations for bond proceeds as a part of our capitalization. And of course, lastly, everything that the Connecticut Green Bank does is considered green. So we are looking to ensure that the bonds that we issue fall in line with the green bond principles and really support the deployment of environmentally sustainable technologies. Next slide. So our timeline here, just to give you a sense of where we're at, so we have had a discussion with our board about our authorization policy, strategy, and timeline. We did that back in January. We're currently working with our bond counsel to develop the bond indenture, as I spoke about before. We hope to get that indenture finalized before Earth Day, April 22nd of this year, where we will be bringing that draft bond indenture to our board of directors for a review and approval of that bond indenture. And it's our hope that in the June timeframe, as I mentioned before, we will be recommending to the board what we expect to issue in terms of bond fund requests, as well as the ability to use or not use the special capital reserve fund that we've got $100 million in place to be able to use to support the credit of those bonds. Q3, Q4 of this year is when we expect to go to market with the bond issuances, and whether or not we need to start the special capital reserve fund will be coordinated with that as well. So these are pretty exciting times as we look at the future of capitalizing revenue sources that we could then use to attract more private investment in Connecticut's clean energy policy, and green bonds is where we are definitely heading. So excited to be seeing our finance team working with that and our accounting team getting their arms around it so that we can attack the green bond markets in 2016. All right, so statutory and infrastructure sector, next slide. So we wanted just a couple of slides here really to update folks on where we're at with regards to the residential solar PV market here in the state of Connecticut. Folks have seen this slide in the past. A couple of things we're showing here. The bars represent the installed cost of residential solar PV since the start of that program back in 2004. The green portion of that bar represents the state subsidy, or the level of subsidy that's currently coming from the Connecticut Green Bank, and the gray part of the bar reflects what the customer side of that expense is. So what you're seeing is effectively over time the Connecticut Green Bank working to reduce the market's reliance on incentives, while at the same time supporting more private financing products in the marketplace. Our hope is that you get the results you're seeing, which is that the market growth is occurring over time with more and more private investment. So you can kind of see what happens when the market is restricted by the availability of government funds from the time period of 2008 through 2010. And when you start to unleash those market prohibitions, we start to see much greater growth through more private investment. So we're looking to attract more private capital providers in our state and support the growth of the industry, while at the same time reducing its reliance on the need for incentives and subsidies. Next slide. So just really a quick overview of how it's looking in terms of homeowner versus third-party ownership of solar PV in the state. We're seeing homeowner purchases at about 15% of the market, the other 85% coming from third-party owned systems. When you look at third-party owned, 65% of those being from power purchase agreements. So a lot of things going on here in this slide. We're seeing average down in the homeowner purchase model percent over the last 6 months of 2015. So we're seeing a lot of great work being done by our contract, escalating leases or stable leases based on the market demand here in the state of Connecticut. And in general, they're using 2.9% growth rates in the escalating leases. So lots of opportunity here in the state of Connecticut, and we're looking forward to seeing more of these products come out in the state. In fact, today we're coming from an event in Bridgeport where we're hoping to see more solar PV being deployed in the low to moderate income market segment, and with our partnerships with Posigen and others, we're starting to see more low to moderate income households start to support solar PV deployment in the market. So that's very, very important. Next slide. All right, so we're going to work towards an update on the residential sector. I'm going to kick us off here with a few slides, and then we're going to transition over to Ben Healy. Next slide. So it starts off with our suite of residential single-family financing programs. So across the three financing programs that we have, in some cases the programs have ended. I'll speak to those in a second. We've got $60 million across more than 2,000 loans and leases that have been approved or closed. It's a very strong credit quality portfolio, and the performance to date has been exceptional. You can see the numbers there. I won't go through them. With regards to the products, the Smarty loan, that is currently our ongoing partnership with local community banks and credit unions, where we provide a second loss guarantee to support them to lend into the market to support the state's implementation of its comprehensive energy strategy. And then we've got the CT Solar loan, our partnership with SunGage, which is wrapped up. We issued $6 million of loans for that product, and SunGage has more recently partnered with the Digital Federal Credit Union out of Massachusetts to expand that pool of capital to $100 million, and they are lending across the region and across the country a loan product that actually has better maturity terms and better interest rates. So this was our first graduation product. We're excited to see the work of SunGage and DCFU take that product across the country. And then lastly is the CT Solar lease. We wrapped that up this year. That was a partnership with U.S. Bank as our tax equity investor, and then Webster Bank and First Niagara Bank as our local lenders into the structure. That product for the residential homeowner has wrapped up in 2015, and our financing team is working to extend that source of capital for the commercial and industrial sector to support municipalities, schools, non-AAA credits through the use of combining CPACE and our SL2 product. Our current focus areas, as I've mentioned, Posigen, we're focusing on Solar for All, a Posigen campaign. As I just mentioned, we came from Shiloh Baptist Church in Bridgeport, where we have partnered today with Freedom, a nonprofit organization that's helping us expand the Posigen product out into, through the communities of faith and out into the low to moderate income market segment. And then, of course, we've got our Smarty loan and our bundle product. So if you're out there and you are looking for a very affordable bundle offer, 2.99% for a 10-year loan, we're also offering it for natural gas at 2.99%, along with expanded underwriting with CHIF. That product is out there. We hope that you all can take advantage of that product to provide homeowners with more comprehensive energy improvements that are consistent with the state's comprehensive energy strategy. So a lot of good work being done in the single-family financing space, and I'm going to transfer this over to Ben Healy, who's going to walk us through what we're doing on the affordable multifamily property. Ben.
Thank you, Brian. Let's go one slide further. All right, great. So just going to spend a few minutes on the affordable multifamily side on behalf of our team led by Carrie O'Neill, who runs our residential programs, as well as Kim Stevenson, our Associate Director for Multifamily Initiatives. We have been ramping up at a very fast pace a set of initiatives focused on the multifamily sector in the state, recognizing that it lives in a world that is distinct from both residential and commercial with elements of both. And so bringing together technical assistance, pre-development financing, and long-term project financing to be able to offer a complete package to the market and make sure that these clean energy upgrades, energy efficiency efforts can go forward for multifamily housing. Let's go to the next slide. So the big announcement that we want to make on this webinar is that together with the Housing Development Fund, a local community development financial institution, or CDFI, based here in Stanford, we have brought into the state a $5 million program-related investment from the MacArthur Foundation to support at least 3 new lending programs focused on the affordable portion of the multifamily housing market. This is a big deal. This is not a grant. This is patient capital from MacArthur. It is an investment related to their interests in clean energy and affordable housing. And they specifically chose to partner with HDF and the Green Bank because of the unique public-private abilities that we have to bring to the table and a focus on financing and market transformation. So this is very exciting. And the very first of these 3 lending programs that is live now and is going to continue to be rolled out over the next few months is this Energy Opportunity Assessment Loan Fund, as it's described here. We have specific names for 2 initiatives underneath it to deal with pre-development costs associated with these projects, scoping, figuring out the audit, the assessment, the opportunity that is real in each of these properties. And HDF will be providing that funding with flexible underwriting, low cost and minimal risk loans to assist property owners in exploring these energy upgrade opportunities. You'll see on each of these slides at the bottom the URL for more information, ctgreenbank.com/multifamily. Encourage you to check out that landing page. But let's dive down into this a little more. So let's go to the next slide. There are 2 immediate loan programs that are available for pre-development, and I'll just stay with the high level. You can read through this slide at your convenience, but the Navigator loan that HDF will be offering is really for owners who are excited to scope and manage the work and select and manage their own contractors. The Navigator loan will allow for upfront analysis and design that's needed to advance projects that are critical for effective project outcomes. For both this loan and for the next pre-development loan, the idea is that we are providing owners the ability to initiate and de-risk energy pre-development work associated with either standalone energy projects or larger gut rehabs or multifamily development projects. And the incentive is essentially that we will take the risk on at the Green Bank level, at the HDF level, with the support of MacArthur, and basically say that there is loan forgiveness if the projects are not technically or financially viable as a result of the pre-development analysis. So to be clear, these are loans, they are underwritten, but they are designed specifically to allow project owners, rather than to value engineer out qualifying energy improvements, to figure out how those energy upgrades can be integrated into a project and get financed. And so long as those projects are viable, this pre-dev money will get paid back out of term financing. But if it is found not to be the case, the risk stays with the lender, not with the developer. And so we're hoping to open up a whole new initiative instead of energy, pun intended, around incorporating these upgrades into these projects. So let's go to the Sherpa loan on the next slide. So if the Navigator loan is really focused on owners who want to own and manage the process themselves, the Sherpa loan, as the name might suggest, has a higher touch aspect to it. Technical assistance provided by New Ecology Incorporated. NEI is a nationally recognized multifamily housing energy firm and a longtime partner of the Green Bank, who would work on behalf of the owner to coordinate pre-development efforts, find qualified contractors, benchmark the building, work with the utilities, and do the assessments and audits necessary to make a project come together. So this is a little bit higher touch. It is the same basic structure in terms of the pre-dev idea, and it is still a loan. It is still expected to be repaid, assuming the project is viable. but in this case it's a much more coordinated process for the owner who'd rather pass this off to an existing expert. So bottom line, beyond going to the website and checking out both of these loans to learn more, is that the MacArthur dollars are now in the state. With the support of HDF, we look forward to rolling them out to developers and owners focused on the multifamily market, both affordable and market rates. These products for pre-development efforts are live and ready to be put to work, and we're very excited to continue to invest in this market. There will be further term lending opportunities that go along building on what we've already rolled out with the Connecticut Housing Investment Fund, SHIFT, which is the Lime loan program, our existing CPACE tools for multifamily owners, but the pre-dev effort is particularly designed for multifamily and ready to go. So let's go to the next slide. Now for solar-only projects, as many folks on this call know, the Green Bank has for the last couple years managed a solar lease and PPA fund that we offer to commercial, industrial, nonprofit, and municipal customers throughout the state. We have had a particular focus in partnership with the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, or CHFA, to identify buildings among the state-sponsored housing portfolio. So these are local rather than federal housing authority properties that are well positioned to go solar and help them do so under the Green Bank's solar lease facility. So that means we're owning, operating, and maintaining these systems for property owners and really taking out all the hard work of going solar. As you can see, we've had a very successful first round of about 3/4 of a megawatt worth of solar across the first 10 property owners, including a bunch of housing authorities as well as a few private properties. Again, this is for affordable housing broadly, whether or not it's part of the state-sponsored housing portfolio. And as part of this webinar, we are building on the announcement made last week by CHFA, and we can go to the next slide here, that we are continuing the Solarized SSHP effort with a round 2 that is live now. If you are interested in participating or know either housing authority properties or other affordable properties that are interested in doing this, we will work with them to identify the solar opportunity, to offer a financing solution, a PPA that is below the current cost of their electric bill, help them navigate the ZREC process, and move forward towards going solar. Again, this is all part of the Green Bank's broader effort to make that energy, writ broadly, energy efficiency, HVAC, solar, CHP, is available to those owners, property owners, and renters as well, for whom the high cost of energy in the state of Connecticut is the most burdensome, and to focus on providing the benefits of cleaner, cheaper, and more reliable across the spectrum. So we're thrilled to be doing this with CHFA. They've been a great partner, as has the Department of Housing. We are completely overhauling the way that energy upgrades can be made available to especially affordable multifamily properties, but multifamily more generally. And the Green Bank is thrilled to be rolling out all these initiatives and continuing to build with our partners to go forward. So I think that's it for me, Brian.
Great. Thank you, Ben, for that overview of our affordable multifamily programs. It's very, very exciting to see what the team is doing in that area, ensuring that green energy is available and accessible for all. So we're just going to go back real quick. I missed a slide that talks really through our Go Solar CT efforts. These are a few things that are a work in progress, but we just wanted to let everyone know we're working on these things, and we're hoping to roll these out in the coming weeks. The first one is a new version of our Solar Market Spotlight. This, as you know, is kind of a handout that we provide. It's a piece of collateral material that really highlights the current economics of purchasing, leasing, and signing on to power purchase agreements for residential solar. We've got a cool piece of that now that's going to include Ed's Insights. For those of you who know, Ed Kranich is part of our residential solar PV team, will be a component part of that Solar Market Spotlight. and we're hoping to launch the hard copy of this this weekend at the home show here in Hartford. We'll make sure that we can get the digital version of that out shortly thereafter. Also, we are updating a version of the GoSolarCT.com website. We expect to launch the updated version in March. The theme really here is helping consumers with their solar journey. We currently have 90 approved contractors through the residential solar investment program with their profiles on GoSolarCT. If you are a contractor out there and you're listening in, our staff will be contacting you to make sure that we've got the right profiles up on the website. So let's work together to getting that up there for you. This is really a great opportunity for contractors to market themselves to consumers, because since we launched that site in May of 2014, we've received approximately 100,000 visitors to that website. So we're excited to be continuing to advance it. You can expect new tools coming soon through that. Is My Home Right for Solar? The Energy Sage Marketplace will be on there, where the consumer puts in their information and contractors can provide bids. So GoSolarCT improvements to be launched in March of this year. So just kind of wrapping this up in terms of other news items, I wanted to start off with our legislative policy proposals for this session. We are working hard on residential property assessed clean energy. We've got a bill that we are working with the Banking Committee on. For those of you who are following our pace, back in August of last year, Secretary Castro of HUD stated that FHA would be issuing guidance on how to treat our pace benefit assessments. So we are looking forward to the federal guidance on our pace, and hopefully building a policy here in the state of Connecticut that improves what we passed in 2011 and builds on the lessons learned that we've had from CPACE over the course of the last couple of years. So that's going to be a big policy push for us this year, is bringing PACE financing to homeowners. We've got a couple of technical fixes, some CPACE consent language, as well as a technical fix around the Solar Home Renewable Energy Credit program that deals with the utility obligations to pay for a 15-year renewable energy credit and a master purchase agreement. So those two are technical items. We've got a heating loan policy that we are working on. We really want to ensure that the products that are being offered out in the marketplace, especially the ones that are subsidized from the public sector, don't distort what the private markets are doing. So we're hoping to recalibrate a policy out there to be in line with where the private sector is. And then lastly, it has to do with administrative powers of the Connecticut Green Bank. For those of you who know, we are underneath Connecticut Innovations for administrative purposes only. So we're looking to adjust that language that will give us the ability to create special purpose vehicles and support more investment like we're doing with foundations and others to create investment opportunities to attract more private investment in clean energy in our state. Next slide. So just a couple of final slides here. The C Action Network, the State Energy Efficiency Action Network, issued last December the Make It Count report. For those of you who are interested in looking at how to evaluate financing programs, this is an excellent report. We just did a webinar last week, so we'd be happy to share those webinars with you. Also, back in December last year at the Conference of the Parties in Paris, the Department of Energy released its Energy Investment Partnerships report, featuring a number of states and the various products and programs that they're instituting, including Connecticut. Tomorrow we will be on a webinar with CDFA presenting what Connecticut has been doing on its green bank that's consistent with the report. And then lastly, the final report was issued by the OECD on green investment banks. This was also issued at COP last year at a special event with our partners, the UK Investment Bank, releasing the report at COP. So we're very excited to be partnering with the Australian Clean Energy Finance Centre, the UK Green Investment Bank, the New York Green Bank, and a number of others, the Coalition for Green Capital and NRDC, where we announced the creation of a Green Bank network. So we're excited to be building this network of colleagues to further advance more private investment in the green energy economy. We're working a lot, as I mentioned before, on evaluation. So we've been working with Opinion Dynamics and Dunsky Energy to develop a framework for evaluating financing programs. There are a number of things that we're looking into that go beyond traditional measures of looking at energy savings and energy production, and start to look at how we're evaluating finance-related impacts. You know, how are we growing the access to capital, term options, improving underwriting criteria, and so forth. So we're excited to be building out this framework, and in terms of how we're thinking about this, we're developing a program logic model that really is going to serve as a framework for us to look at both how we're changing the supply of capital as well as consumer demand, but how we're also ensuring more data transparency into the market so that we can see more cost-competitive private investment in Connecticut's clean energy economy. So this is a work in progress. It's our hope to be working with our utility colleagues within the Energize Connecticut structure and our joint committee of the Energy Efficiency Board and the Connecticut Green Bank to develop a program logic that makes sense from the Green Bank perspective. So stay tuned for that. And lastly, just want to wrap it up. For those of you who are interested in financial statements and progress statements, take a look at the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. It's on our website. Underneath the About Us section, you will see a really extensive review not only of our financial position, our various financial statements, which serves as a foundation for us to attract more private investment, but also how we're using those financial resources to achieve societal benefits. So you will see a fairly extensive part of that report that speaks to how we are utilizing resources to create more benefit to Connecticut in terms of jobs, private investment in green energy, and so forth. So take a look at that. We believe that the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, is going to be the gold standard in reporting for green banks, and we're excited to be bringing that to the market. So with that, I think we are now in the Q&A portion of the webinar.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Thanks also to Ben and Genevieve, and to all of the attendees on the line who have been submitting questions throughout the presentation. I'll begin with the questions that we have in already, but please continue to type in your questions into the GoToMeeting question box on your screen. We'll get to as many as we can. If we don't get to your question during this time, we'll do your question right online. So the first question that we have in it appears to be for Genevieve, and the question is that several commercial property owners for larger properties in the specific community that the question is from are also operating in communities, in other communities, and may be already engaged in a CPACE project elsewhere. Is there a way to leverage those existing relationships for projects in other towns?
I'm not quite sure I actually understand the question. It sounds like there are property owners that have got some projects in one town and they have properties in other towns that are not currently part of the program. Is that it, Joe?
Yeah. So it seems to just be about leveraging existing relationships. It's not clear whether or not the second town is involved in the program yet.
Got it. Okay. Well, for the person that's asking the question, if the question is with regards to towns that are currently not in the program, please contact us and let us know where you own commercial properties. We will happily reach out to your elected officials right away and engage them with all the information they need to join the program. For a town to join the CPACE program, the legislative body of the town, which is sometimes the Board of Selectmen, sometimes it's a full town hall meeting, they have to pass a resolution to join the program, and that resolution also enables their top elected official to sign an agreement with the Green Bank to join the program. So for anyone that has commercial properties in a town that you do not see on that map or on our website, just get in touch with us right away, and we'll work on getting them in.
Great, thanks. So the second question we have in is, what is the total available market for residential solar in Connecticut?
Great question. So the TAM for residential solar in Connecticut, we've estimated at about 3 gigawatts. So a couple of years ago, we had a company called GeoStellar put together what was the technical potential, the economic potential for rooftop solar PV in the residential sector. We've kind of settled on about 3 gigawatts. They flew planes over the state, did some satellite images to do some calculations, and we settled on about 3 gigawatts. Within the context of the solar policy, so the original policy was to deliver 30 megawatts by 2022, which was 1% of the TAM. When the governor expanded that policy, the SREC policy that passed last year, it expanded the solar program to 300 megawatts, or 10% of the TAM. So our hope is that once we work through the 300 megawatts of residential solar PV in Connecticut, that the market will be in a position to compete, offer products, support the customer themselves, and that they can then work towards fulfilling the rest of the market potential for the state of Connecticut.
Great. So next question, is anything being done to shift Connecticut residents to a loan, purchase, or lease rather than a PPA?
So interesting question. So we definitely track how our customers are utilizing the incentives, whether they're an upfront rebate or paid out over time through a performance-based incentive. Our whole hope is that customers are able to make decisions themselves based on what is beneficial to them. Now, our focus is really ensuring that there's a competitive marketplace out there, that contractors have all the tools available to be able to support a customer's decision. So for the first couple of years of the program, we had the CT Solar Loan. Those loan programs exist out there. The lease, we were working hard with a couple of lease providers and understanding how we could bring them to Connecticut to support local installers. So it's our hope that we can bring provide customers with as much information as possible and access to financing as possible. That's why the Go Solar CT website is going to be very, very important. So we don't choose what products customers want. The market determines that, and we hope that the market's able to compete from there.
Another one for Genevieve. Is there a published schedule for contractor training for the year? And if so, where can that be found? And specifically for commercial and industrial contractors.
Great question. I'm glad someone asked that. There will be a schedule. It is not yet up on the website. All of our currently registered contractors will be receiving an email in the next couple of days, sort of recapping the contractor event we had last week. And that should include the schedule of training sessions, which then will subsequently also be posted online. So for the time being, what I would say is if you are a contractor and you are not currently registered with the CPACE program, please visit our website, www.cpace.com/contractors, or just go to the website and click on contractors and fill out the registration form so that you're in our database and we've got your contact information. So that will be forthcoming. Thanks.
Great. Next question is, why is a home energy audit or through the HESP program a requirement for getting the CT solar rebate?
Another great question. So we think it's important that homeowners first take a look at and assess what their energy consumption is. So Home Energy Solutions HESP is one option to doing that. We want to make sure that once they do that, that homeowners then right-size their solar PV system. Also, Home Energy Solutions is one way for contractors to fulfill the energy efficiency requirement. We also have other avenues. If contractors want to use BPI certified contractors to do an assessment, we allow that as well. If this is something that you're interested in looking into, drop me or actually ask Ed and he can provide you with all the information that you need on what would qualify in terms of an energy audit that may be over and beyond or outside of the Home Energy Solutions Program.
Great. We'll just give it another second for questions. So one more. Has there been any progress with CHFA, CHFA giving lender consent on existing multifamily CPACE projects?
Sorry, Joe, you broke up a little. Say that again.
Sure. Has there been any progress with CHFA giving lender consent on existing multifamily CPACE projects?
Got it. With CHFA, the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, the challenge continues to be the original master indenture for their bondholders with respect to what's allowed to get placed on any individual property assets that are securing those bonds. So that has not progressed as of yet, although there's still continuing conversations as to ways to bring CPACE to CHFA properties. At the federal level, with respect to HUD properties, that conversation is advancing, and we expect guidance, I would expect within Q2, allowing for the use of PACE, commercial PACE on HUD supported, and that would include FHA insured multifamily properties in the state of Connecticut. So we're certainly very excited about that with our federal partners and continuing to work towards solutions with CHFA for CPACE access locally.
Great, thanks, Ben. So to all the folks on the line who we haven't answered their questions, we will do our best to follow up with you directly offline. And with that, thank you all again for joining. Final reminder that the slides and an audio recording of this webinar will be distributed via email by the end of this week. So thank you again, and we look forward to you joining our next Quarterly Insights webinar.